My son kicked me out of his house saying we don't need you anymore. The next day, he called the police because of what he found in his kitchen. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about family. This is a story about a mother who gave everything to her son. She raised him alone after his father left when he was just 5 years old. She worked 2 jobs to put him through college. She sacrificed her own dreams so he could have his. And when he finally made it, when he finally became successful and bought that big house he always wanted, she thought her struggles were finally over. She thought wrong. Margaret had been living with her son David for 6 months. After she retired, her small pension wasn't enough to cover rent in the city anymore. David had insisted she move in with him and his wife. He said it made sense. He had that big house with 4 bedrooms. His wife Sarah worked from home, so Margaret wouldn't be alone all day. It seemed perfect, but things changed fast. Sarah started making comments, small things at first, about how Margaret rearranged the kitchen cabinets, about how she did the laundry wrong, about how she watched TV too loud in the evenings. Margaret tried to stay out of the way. She tried to be helpful without being intrusive. She cooked dinner some nights. She cleaned when they were at work. She babysat their dog when they went out. But it was never enough. The comments became more frequent, more pointed. David started taking Sarah's side in every disagreement. He stopped asking Margaret how her day was. He stopped sitting with her during dinner. He started eating in his office, saying he had work to finish. Then came that Tuesday evening. Margaret was in the living room watching her usual show when David walked in. His face was stern, cold even. He stood there for a moment before speaking. "Mom, we need to talk. Sarah and I have been discussing this, and we think it's best if you find your own place. We need our space. We're planning to start a family soon, and we just don't need you here anymore." Margaret felt like the floor disappeared beneath her. "Don't need you here anymore." Those words cut deeper than any knife. She had given this man everything. Every ounce of her energy, every dollar she ever made, every dream she ever had. And now he was telling her she wasn't needed. She tried to reason with him. "David, honey, I don't take up much space. I can stay in my room more. I won't bother you two." But he was firm. His decision was made. Sarah appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, nodding along with everything David said. They had already made up their minds. Margaret had 1 week to find a place and move out. That week was the longest of Margaret's life. She called her sister who lived 3 states away. She looked at apartments she couldn't afford. She checked into retirement communities that had waiting lists years long. Her pension was barely $1,200 a month. Rent for even a studio apartment in a safe neighborhood was at least $900. That left her with $300 for food, medicine, utilities, and everything else. She felt abandoned, betrayed. This was the boy she had rocked to sleep every night when he had nightmares. The boy she had driven to soccer practice at 6 in the morning. The boy she had helped with homework until midnight. The boy she had worked double shifts for so he could go on the school trip to Washington. The boy she had believed in when everyone else said he would never make it. And now that boy was a man who looked her in the eyes and said, "We don't need you." On the 6th day, Margaret was packing her belongings in her room when she overheard David and Sarah talking in the kitchen. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop there. Their voices just carried through the thin walls. "I feel bad," David said. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" Sarah's response was quick and sharp. "David, she's suffocating us. We can't have a life with her here. She's always around, always watching, always commenting on things. We deserve to have our house to ourselves. Besides, she raised you by herself. She can take care of herself now." Margaret's hands froze mid-fold on the sweater she was packing. She had never commented on anything. She had gone out of her way to be invisible. But in Sarah's mind, her mere existence was an inconvenience. That night, Margaret barely slept. She had found a small room for rent in a house owned by an elderly woman named Ruth. It was 40 minutes away by bus. The room was tiny, barely bigger than a closet, but it was all she could afford. Ruth seemed kind enough. She had lost her husband 2 years ago and was renting out rooms to make ends meet. Margaret would share a bathroom with 2 other tenants. The kitchen was communal. It wasn't ideal, but it was shelter. On the 7th day, Margaret's nephew Tom showed up with his pickup truck to help her move. He didn't ask questions. He just loaded her boxes and drove her to her new place. When they arrived, he helped her carry everything up to the 2nd floor. He looked around the cramped room and his face said everything his mouth didn't. "Aunt Margaret, if you need anything, you call me. Okay? Don't be proud. Just call." She thanked him and assured him she would be fine. But as she sat on the edge of the narrow bed that night, surrounded by boxes in a room that smelled like mothballs and old carpet, she didn't feel fine. She felt discarded, used up, thrown away like something that had outlived its usefulness. She had raised a son who became successful, and her reward was a closet in a stranger's house. But Margaret wasn't one to wallow. The next morning she woke up and started unpacking. She organized her small space as best she could. She introduced herself to Ruth and the other tenants. She found the nearest grocery store and figured out the bus schedule. She was determined to make this work. She had survived worse. She had survived poverty. She had survived being a single mother. She had survived her own mother's death when she was just 19. She could survive this too. 3 weeks passed. Margaret settled into a routine. She volunteered at the local library twice a week. She joined a book club at the community center. She made friends with Ruth, who turned out to be wonderful company. They drank tea together in the evenings and watched old movies. Ruth had her own story of family disappointment. Her son had moved to Australia 15 years ago and called maybe twice a year. "It's not that they don't love us," Ruth said one evening. "They just don't need us anymore. And once you're not needed, you become invisible." Margaret nodded. She understood that feeling all too well. David hadn't called once since she left. Not to see if she arrived safely. Not to see if she needed anything. Not even to ask for her new address. The silence hurt more than the words he had said. It confirmed what she already knew. She really wasn't needed anymore. Then came that Wednesday morning. Margaret was at the library, organizing returned books when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Mom?" David's voice was panicked, strained. "Where are you? I need you to come home right now." "Home?" Margaret felt a flash of anger. "I don't have a home with you anymore, David. You made that very clear." "Mom, please." His voice cracked. "Something happened. The police are here. I need you, please." Margaret's heart started racing. Despite everything, he was still her son. "What happened? Are you okay? Is Sarah okay? Just come, please. I'll text you the address." "Wait, you're not here anymore. Where are you living?" Margaret gave him Ruth's address. He said he would send a car for her. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up outside. The officer explained that David had requested they bring her to the house. It was urgent. The drive back to David's house felt surreal. Margaret's mind raced with possibilities. Was someone hurt? Was there a break-in? Had something happened to Sarah? When they arrived, there were 2 more police cars in the driveway. The front door was open. Margaret rushed inside, her heart pounding. David was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. Sarah was standing by the window crying. 2 officers were in the kitchen examining something. David looked up when Margaret entered. His eyes were red. His face was pale. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." Margaret sat down beside him. "David, what happened? Talk to me." He took a shaky breath. "This morning I went into the kitchen to make coffee. I opened the cabinet where we keep the mugs, and there was an envelope taped to the inside of the door. It had my name on it. I opened it, and inside was a letter. And money. A lot of money." Margaret was confused. "What letter? What money?" David pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to her. It was her handwriting. The letter read, "David, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I hid this money over the years from my paychecks. It's not much, but it's yours. I was saving it to help you and Sarah buy baby furniture when the time came. I know you said you don't need me, but I need you to know that being your mother was the greatest joy of my life. Even at the end, I love you more than words can say. Take care of yourself, Mom." Margaret's hand started shaking. She had written that letter 2 years ago, when she first started feeling sick. She had hidden it in David's kitchen cabinet when she moved in, thinking that if something happened to her, he would eventually find it. She had completely forgotten about it after her health scare turned out to be nothing serious. David was sobbing now. "Mom, when I read this, I thought something happened to you. I thought you were dead. I called every hospital in the area. I called your friends. Nobody knew where you were. I realized I didn't even have your new address. I didn't even know where my own mother was living. I called the police because I thought maybe something bad happened and nobody found you yet." The officer approached. "Ma'am, your son was very distressed. He thought you might have taken your own life. We were preparing to file a missing person report when he remembered your nephew, Tom, might know where you were." Margaret looked at her son, his successful, accomplished son, who had told her she wasn't needed, and now he was falling apart because he thought he had lost her. Sarah approached slowly. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for pushing David to ask you to leave. I was selfish. I was thinking about what I wanted, not what was right. When we thought something happened to you, I realized how terrible we've been." David grabbed Margaret's hands. "Mom, please come home, please. I was an idiot. I let Sarah's complaints get in my head and I forgot everything you did for me. I forgot that you're the reason I'm here at all. I forgot that you sacrificed everything so I could have this life. And I repaid you by throwing you out like trash." The officers quietly excused themselves, satisfied that there was no actual emergency, just a family crisis that needed resolution. Margaret sat there looking at her son. Part of her wanted to lecture him, to make him feel the pain she had felt, to let him sit with his guilt. But another part of her, the mother part, just wanted to hold him. They talked for hours that day, really talked. David admitted that he had been overwhelmed with work stress and had taken it out on Margaret. Sarah admitted that she had been jealous of the close relationship between David and his mother. She felt like an outsider in her own marriage, so she created conflict to drive a wedge between them. Margaret listened. She didn't excuse their behavior, but she tried to understand it. She had made mistakes too. Maybe she had been too present. Maybe she hadn't given them enough space. But that didn't justify being thrown out. David begged her to move back in. Margaret refused, not because she was being stubborn, but because she had discovered something important in those 3 weeks away. She had discovered that she could build a life for herself, that she had value beyond being needed, that she could make friends and find purpose outside of being someone's mother. "But I do want to be part of your life again," she told David. "I want us to have dinner together once a week. I want you to call me. I want to meet my grandchildren when they come. But I also need my own space, my own life. I've spent 60 years being what other people needed me to be. It's time I figure out who I am when nobody needs me." David nodded, tears streaming down his face. He understood, or at least he was trying to. Over the following months, they rebuilt their relationship. David helped Margaret move to a better apartment, a 1-bedroom place in a safe neighborhood with a small balcony where she could have plants. He paid the difference between what her pension could cover and the actual rent, not because she asked, but because he wanted to. Sarah started joining them for weekly dinners. She apologized again and again, until Margaret finally told her to stop. The past is the past. Let's focus on moving forward. Margaret's life took on new dimensions. She got certified to teach English to adult immigrants at the community college. She started dating a kind man named Frank, who she met at the library. She traveled to visit her sister. She joined a hiking group for seniors. She discovered pottery and found out she was actually pretty good at it. David watched his mother bloom into someone he had never seen before. She was happy, genuinely happy. Not just content or making the best of things, but actually thriving. He realized that by pushing her away, he had accidentally given her the push she needed to find herself. But he also realized how close he had come to losing her forever. What if she had actually been in trouble when he found that letter? What if something had happened during those 3 weeks when he hadn't bothered to check on her? What if she had needed him, and he wasn't there, just like he had told her he didn't need her? The guilt ate at him for months. Margaret noticed. One evening during their weekly dinner, she put down her fork and looked at him seriously. "David, you need to forgive yourself. Yes, you hurt me. Yes, you made a terrible mistake. But you're human. Humans make mistakes. What matters is what you do after. And you've shown up. You've apologized. You've made changes. That's all I can ask for. But, Mom, what if—" "No what ifs," Margaret interrupted. "We can't live in the what ifs. We can only live in the what is. And what is that we're here now, together, and we have a chance to do better. So let's do better." Sarah, who had been quiet through most of the dinner, spoke up. "Margaret, can I ask you something? How do you do it? How do you forgive so easily?" Margaret smiled. "Oh, honey, it's not easy. Forgiveness is never easy. But holding on to anger is harder. Anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I'm too old to poison myself. Life is too short to spend it being bitter." As time went on, Margaret's relationship with David and Sarah deepened in ways it never had before. There was honesty now. Vulnerability. When Sarah got pregnant 8 months after the incident, she called Margaret first, before even telling David. She wanted advice. She was scared. "What if I'm not a good mother?" Sarah asked through tears. "What if I mess up as badly as I messed up with you?" Margaret held her hand. "You will mess up. All mothers do. But that doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you human. Love your child. Show up for your child. Apologize when you're wrong. That's all you can do." When David and Sarah's daughter Emma was born, Margaret was in the delivery room. She held her granddaughter and felt a completeness she hadn't known she was missing. This tiny human represented hope, a new generation, a chance to break old patterns and create better ones. Margaret was an active grandmother, but not an intrusive one. She respected boundaries. She asked before giving advice. She helped when asked but didn't impose. She had learned the hard lesson of what happens when you're too needed, and she wasn't going to repeat that pattern. David often reflected on how different things could have been. He shared his thoughts with his mother one day, while they watched Emma play in the park. "Mom, I think about that letter all the time. What if I had actually lost you? What if you had died alone in that tiny room? And I never got to say I'm sorry." Margaret squeezed his hand. "But you didn't lose me. And you did say sorry. We can't torture ourselves with alternate realities. This is our reality. We're here. We're together. We're okay." But David couldn't shake the guilt entirely. He started volunteering at a senior center, helping elderly people whose families had abandoned them. He saw his mother in every one of them, people who had given everything to raise their children, only to be discarded when they were no longer useful. He advocated for better support systems for seniors. He donated to organizations that helped elderly people find housing. He became an activist for elder rights. It was his way of making amends, not just to his mother, but to all the mothers out there who had been treated the way he treated Margaret. Sarah underwent her own transformation. She started therapy to address her jealousy issues. She worked on her relationship with her own mother, which had been strained. She learned that the way we treat others often reflects unresolved issues within ourselves. Her jealousy of Margaret wasn't really about Margaret at all. It was about her own insecurities and her own complicated relationship with maternal figures. Margaret watched both of them grow and felt a strange sense of pride. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives become the catalysts for the most important growth. If David hadn't kicked her out, if she hadn't experienced that rejection, she might never have discovered her own independence. David might never have confronted his capacity for cruelty. Sarah might never have addressed her demons. Suffering, when processed correctly, can lead to wisdom. Years passed. Emma grew into a curious, kind child who adored her grandmother. Margaret taught her how to make pottery. They had special grandmother-granddaughter days, where they would go to museums or have tea parties or just walk in the park and talk about life. One day, when Emma was 6, she asked Margaret a question that stopped her in her tracks. "Grandma, why don't you live with us?" Margaret knelt down to Emma's level. "Well, sweetheart, I have my own home, my own space where I can do what I want when I want. But don't you get lonely? Sometimes, Margaret admitted. But being alone isn't the same as being lonely. I have friends. I have hobbies. I have you and your mom and dad. I'm not alone at all. Emma thought about this. Daddy said he made you leave once. That he was mean to you. Margaret was surprised David had told Emma about this. She looked up at her son, who was watching from across the room. He nodded as if to say, yes, I told her. She deserves to know. Margaret turned back to Emma. Yes, he did. Your daddy made a mistake. A big one. But he apologized, and he's worked very hard to be better. People make mistakes, Emma. What matters is what they do after. If I make a mistake, will you forgive me too? Margaret pulled her granddaughter into a hug. Oh, sweetheart, I will always forgive you. Always. Because that's what love is. Love isn't never hurting each other. Love is hurting each other, acknowledging it, and choosing to repair and rebuild. This moment encapsulated everything Margaret had learned. Forgiveness isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about refusing to let that behavior define your future. It's about recognizing that people are complex, flawed, and capable of change. She thought about the woman she had been 3 years ago, sitting in that tiny room in Ruth's house, feeling worthless and unwanted. She had come so far since then. She had built a life that wasn't dependent on being needed by someone else. She had found purpose beyond motherhood. She had discovered that she could be whole all by herself. But she had also learned that independence doesn't mean isolation. She could be independent and still maintain loving relationships. She could have boundaries and still be close to her family. She could forgive without forgetting. She could move forward without pretending the past didn't happen. David approached his mother later that evening as she was getting ready to leave. Mom, thank you for everything, for forgiving me, for teaching Emma about mistakes and forgiveness, for showing all of us what strength really looks like. Margaret smiled. David, you gave me a gift too, even if you didn't mean to. You forced me to find myself. I'm not saying I'm grateful you kicked me out. That still hurt like hell, but I'm grateful for who I became because of it. Can I ask you something? David said. Do you ever regret forgiving me? Do you ever wish you had stayed angry and cut me out of your life? Margaret considered the question seriously. Honestly, sometimes I wonder what that would have felt like. To just say no, you hurt me too badly and walk away. But then I see you with Emma. I see the father you've become. I see how you show up for other elderly people through your volunteer work. And I realize that if I had cut you out, you might never have become this person. My pain had purpose. It transformed all of us. So what's the morale of this story? Is it that you should always forgive family no matter what they do? No. Forgiveness is personal. Nobody can tell you what you should or shouldn't forgive. Is it that everything happens for a reason? Maybe. Or maybe we just find reasons for the things that happen, because that's how humans make sense of suffering. The real lesson here is more nuanced. It's that relationships are complicated. Family is complicated. Love is complicated. You can love someone deeply and still hurt them terribly. You can be hurt by someone and still choose to let them back into your life. You can forgive someone without forgetting what they did. You can move forward without pretending the past was okay. Margaret's story is about resilience, about finding yourself when you've spent your whole life being what others needed you to be, about the strength it takes to forgive, but also the strength it takes to maintain boundaries, about the courage to start over at 60 years old, about refusing to be defined by how others treat you. David's story is about accountability, about facing the worst parts of yourself, about the work it takes to become better after you've been terrible, about living with guilt but not letting it paralyze you, about transforming your mistakes into meaning. Sarah's story is about self-awareness, about recognizing when your actions come from your own wounds, about doing the hard work to heal yourself so you don't hurt others, about swallowing your pride and admitting when you're wrong. And Emma's story, though she's just beginning, is about breaking cycles, about learning from the previous generation's mistakes, about understanding that love includes accountability. None of them are perfect. All of them are trying, and maybe that's the most any of us can do. If this story made you feel something, hit subscribe.